Okay, thank you, Professor Dash. So, at the outset, I would like to extend my hearty welcome to all of you on the very auspicious day of Dhanteras. And let me welcome you all to the lecture series of Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership, which has been established in Kharagpur in the year 2021. The basic objective of this academy is to provide most fundamental level of interdisciplinary education by innovatively combining philosophy, reasoning, and liberal arts into the core curriculum of various science as well as engineering disciplines. You are well acquainted with the information that IIT Kharagpur is already working in the area of building future leaders, and in this context we have different departments like Rajiv Gandhi School of Intellectual Property Law, we have Vinod Gupta School of Management, we have Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership. So these are few to name. So as a part of our initiative, we are trying to arrange a few invited lecture series to keep the learner always encouraged. Tata Steel is always been playing a magnificent role in the betterment of the teaching community, and IIT Kharagpur is proud to be associated with Tata Steel and fortunate enough that we have got the golden opportunity of having the most important person of Tata Steel here in today's lecture. And I feel very proud and I'm really very happy to tell you that our honorable today's guest is our BOG chairman, and he is also taking care of the Tata Steel in a very brightest way. It is my immense pleasure to have our honorable chairman of BOG, Mr. V Narendran, in this grand lecture series, which will be on the topic, the leadership of art of transforming. I hope the student will be immensely getting benefited, and they will not only be able to learn the key success of growth in any profession, but also will be able to make them as a leader in their future endeavors. Now, I would like to welcome our beloved Chairman BOG of IIT Kharagpur, Mr. Honorable our Narendran ji, and I would like to welcome once again to you to today's lecture, and I once again welcome all the august participants who are attending today's lecture. So I will switch on to Professor Dash for the smooth conducting of today's lecture series. Thank you. Thank you all. Professor Dash.
Yes, thank you, madam. Yes, I got distracted, sorry. Again, it gives me an immense pleasure to welcome Mr. V Narendran, CEO and Managing Director of Tata Steel and Chairman, Board of Governors, IIT Kharagpur. In this October edition of the monthly
Manav, again we are not able to hear you.
Yes.
Okay, so we have today Shri TV Narendran ji with us. Ex-NIT Trichy, I am Calcutta, and now Chairman BOG XLRI NIT Kharagpur, and of course the CEO and MD of Tata steels. And he is a Chevening Scholar also, and he attended advanced management program at INSEAD, France. He has been the chairman of Executive Board of Directors of World Steel Association. Sir, we are really delighted to have you here for a talk on leadership as a tool for transformation. We know that you have already transformed Tatas. So the art of transforming, people are really eager to listen to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Commander Jetli, and thank you, Professor Banerjee. So should I get started or?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So good evening, good morning, depending on where you're dialing in from. And I join Professor Banerjee in wishing you all a happy Dhanteras. I see Dr. Partha Ghosh also joined. Good evening or good morning to you. Good to see you. I know this is really the wrong week in the year to call everyone to attend to a lecture, that too in the evening. But anyway, I think circumstances have conspired to get us all together today. So I'll talk for maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes and leave it open to Q&A because leadership and transformation are very big subjects. It's very contextual. Nobody can claim to be the authority on it. All of us have experienced it, either leading it or being part of it. So I'll talk on the subject from my experiences, my observations, and we'll certainly look forward to the Q&A to get on to very specific areas that you may want to discuss. So I'll talk a bit on leadership and then I'll talk a bit on transformation and how both come together. So to me, leadership is multiple things. To start with, on leadership, you're always a student. So to me, it doesn't matter what you've achieved, what position you are in, you have to accept that if you want to be a good leader, you have to always be a student. Because there's so much to learn from different people, from different situations, and your ability to translate your observations into learnings and self-development is what to me anchors a good leadership journey. And we should never make the mistake of thinking that you can't learn from people who may be less educated than you, who may be junior to you in the organization, who may not be doing so well as you are, because everyone has an experience and has demonstrated how to deal with that experience. And leadership to me fundamentally is about dealing with situations, dealing with people, and how you come out of difficult situations and so on and so forth. So you could learn from a 21-year-old sports person, you could learn from a 21-year-old person on the shop floor in a plant, you could learn from a student, a teacher can learn from a student, I can learn from many of my younger colleagues who are new in the organization. So there is no limit to who you can learn from, and nobody should think that they are the final word on leadership, because I think it's a never-ending process of learning. To me, it's also about being passionate about what you do, because if you have to be effective as a leader, I think you have to be passionate about what you do, what you're driving towards. You should pursue excellence in whatever you do. You may be a chef, you may be a mechanic, you may be anything. But if you pursue excellence in whatever you do, other people will want to work with you. Right? So I think being passionate about what you do and pursuing excellence is very important. It's also about being authentic, being credible, because that's how people trust you, because people see through you very easily, irrespective of how you project yourself. So it's very important to understand that authenticity and credibility are very important qualities to have if you want to be an effective leader. And for that, you also need to have the humility to listen and learn, like I said at the beginning. It's also about the resilience that you demonstrate, the temperament that you have, how you pick yourself up from failures. A good leader is someone who can handle both successes and failures well. And oftentimes people assume people who reach leadership positions have not had any failures or have had fewer failures. I mean, most people who reach leadership positions have probably handled their failures better than others, and that's why they are where they are. So, so all these qualities together, kind of play a role in making you a good or an effective leader. Recently, somebody all of you know, and people like us in the Tata Group knew reasonably well, Mr. Ratan Tata passed away. So while everyone knew Mr. Ratan Tata, I think what honestly pleasantly surprised many of us. We all knew he was very well loved and respected, but the outpouring of emotions were much more than any of us had imagined. I was in Bombay at that time, and to see the thousands of people who had queued up, and these are common people, these are not Tata employees, some of them may have been, but a large number of people, and many of the people who had never known him, right? Many had known him, but almost everyone had heard stories about him. So again, and I think The Economist wrote an article at that time saying that, while many corporate people, many senior corporate people are respected, very few kind of get the love that was demonstrated that time. And I think one of the reasons, when you ask most people, what is it that they saw in Mr. Ratan Tata, a lot of it came out about the simplicity, his humility, things like that. It was not about his success as a corporate leader. Of course, he was very successful as a corporate leader, but it was more about the qualities of the person. Because there are many others who have also had very successful corporate careers, who've led conglomerates, who've led groups internationally. But I think it's the personal qualities of the person, his humility, his simplicity, which endeared him to people. And the fact that, so a lot of the stories one heard on television or read in the print media, etc., were about these things. And I think I quote this often whenever I'm asked to speak, Maya Angelou, the American writer, philosopher, she once said, people will not remember what you said or what you did. People will remember how you made them feel, right? And I think in many ways Mr. Tata embodied that. Anyone who had interacted with him came away with a great feeling, and they repeated that to many others, and hence, the kind of respect and affection that people had for him. So I think leadership is a complex subject, and that's why I go back to what I said at the beginning. You're always a student, and there's always so much to learn from books you read and the people you see and the experiences that you have. Now I'll move on to transformation, because this subject I was given is leadership and the art of transformation. So to talk about transformation, I'll draw from my experiences in Tata Steel. This is the only company I worked for. I joined Tata Steel in 1988. I've spent 36 years in Tata Steel. And Tata Steel, as many of you know, is a company who's been around for more than 100 years. And one of the reasons why we've been around for more than 100 years is the constantly transformed assets. We've been written off many times in the past. I don't say it with arrogance or complacence. I say it with the fact that we are always willing to look at criticism and work on it and improve and transform ourselves. And that's why we've seen through 2 world wars, 2 pandemics, and more than a century of turbulence and change. So when I look at even the last 36 years of Tata Steel and what are the learnings and lessons that I have had on transformation, I first step back and look at what is the context in which you do a transformation, right? So there's a context in which there's a fire burning, everyone knows there's a fire burning and you have to transform. It's an existential issue. So soon after I joined the company, we were in that period, because in 1991, when the Indian economy opened up, import duties on steel were slashed, anybody could build a steel plant, and most of the newer players didn't have the legacy costs that Tata Steel had. Till 1991, steel prices were fixed by the government. Customers who wanted to buy steel had to land up in a Tata Steel or a sale office, come with a check and wait for the allocation of steel. So that was the kind of era which was pre-91, and import duties of more than 100%. And suddenly you had to compete with the world. And Tata Steel we were 1/10 the size in India then as we are today. So which means we've grown 10 times in the last 30 years. But we had 80,000 people, so we had almost twice the people that we have today. So it was, it was not certainly seen as a company which would survive that decade. And when Dr. Irani took over as the managing director of Tata Steel at that time, I think it was clear to everyone that we needed to move fast, otherwise we wouldn't survive. So transformation can happen in a situation where it's very clear to everyone that if you stand on the spot, you die. Even if you run, you may die, right? So it depends on how fast you can change. But even if you acknowledge that there is a need to transform, it's not easy to transform, because that means all of us have to change. It's not some of us have to change, right? So there are a set of things that you do there. The second kind of opportunity to transform itself happened to us between 2000 and 2010. By which time we'd done all the transformation as Tata Steel. We were the lowest cost producer of steel in the world. So we were EVA positive. Everything looked good. So we could have stood on the spot. But we were a very profitable small company as far as the global steel industry was concerned. And the steel industry was consolidating and growing. So in that decade, the opportunity to transform ourselves was more from how do you switch your mindset from a survival mindset to a growth mindset. So that also calls for transformation. It's not an existential issue, but it's about seizing the opportunities that there are. And that also does not happen if you are so used to fighting with your back against the wall. You may lose, you may be short of confidence to step out there and have growth as your mind. So survival to growth is a big transformation in itself. So we went through that period. The third kind of context is what we've been going through for the last maybe 20 years or so, or maybe 10 years, simply because one of the strengths of Tata Steel has been the fact that we have our own mines, we have our own iron ore mines, and in 2014 a law came in which said that by 2030 all these mines will get auctioned, right? So we knew that we had a lot to do in the next 15-16 years, right? And we started a journey at that time. This was also a time when digital was coming into everyone's vocabulary, sustainability was coming into everyone's vocabulary. We had China slowing down and exporting a lot of steel. So it was not the kind of crisis we faced in the 90s, but it was something about if you didn't transform yourself, you are not future ready as an organization. So it's more like the famous story about the frog in a vessel with water where the water is boiling slowly, right? So if you don't transform, if you don't change, it gets too late. So that's also a context in which you need to transform. So, and there would be many other contexts. So when you look at transformation, the first thing is to understand the context in which you want to drive transformation, right? And then that allows you to then say, what is it that I need to do? So once you kind of understood and identified the context, to me, then to drive transformation, the first and most important thing to do is to be able to articulate it. Because in large organizations, unless you communicate clearly, everyone will go away with different messages. You may say one thing, but it will mean different things to different people and at different levels of the organization. So how do you articulate the problem at hand? And how do you convince people in the organization who need to be with you to drive this transformation? So an example of the 90s was when we needed to bring down the workforce from 80,000 to 40,000 in a company which was known for its labor policies. It was known for the fact that since 1929 we had not had a strike. How do you drive this kind of a change? In India, even today people say labor laws are tough and it's difficult to lay off people. And we did this in the 90s. We reduced the workforce by 40,000 in the 90s without a problem. But how was it done? It was done by taking the unions on board. It was done by sending the union leaders across the world to see steel plants and see what productivity is like in steel plants in Korea or in Europe or the US and elsewhere, right? So once they saw that these are the companies you're going to compete against, they realized that we needed to change. Then the management sat with the unions and drew up plans. And because, of course, we had a history of being fair to the unions, we had a very generous separation package, a voluntary retirement package, which then the union leaders, worked with the management to see how could we get people to sign up for that, because it was a fairly generous package at that point in time, the most generous package offered at that point in time. So people willingly signed up, and we had different schemes where you could give up your job and get your son into it, which meant you didn't reduce the number of people, but you brought down the cost of an employee. Many ideas came through, and it was worked between the union and management. The union at that time also showed tremendous maturity and farsightedness to say that if we don't do this, we won't survive the end of the decade, right? So there was a modernization of the plant, there was a modernization of the mind. So you took the stakeholders along with it. And if you don't take the stakeholders along, it's very difficult to try transformation. Because transformation is something that involves people. So you need the people on your side if you have to drive transformation, right? So that is an example of what is done. When you look at, so articulating the thing is a very important part of driving the transformation. The second thing is to build the capabilities, right, for the transformation. So even at that time, what was true, we looked at the Japanese manufacturing methods and practices, because in the 80s and 90s that was the most popular way to drive efficiency. And we adopted the TQM way of running the company. We built a lot of capability in that, got young talented people into the team working with Dr. Irani. A lot of people were sent to Japan for training, so on and so forth. And we did similar things subsequently as well. Even in the last decade, when we transformed we started a digital journey maybe about 7-8 years back. A lot of the leadership went across the world, saw companies who were doing this and saw the value that they were unlocking for themselves, right? And we also had reverse mentoring programs. We had the youngsters, younger demographic, working with the seniors to help drive this transformation, right? We invested hugely in the infrastructure that is required to drive a digital transformation, because we operate in very remote parts of the country. So you need to have the digital infrastructure, the foundations that are required to capture the data that you need to capture and drive the transformation, right? So building the capabilities, investing in the facilities also are an important part of it. It's not about saying you want to transform, but not thinking through the execution of the transformation, right? So that's also an important part of the transformation journey. You need to get the right people on board, right? And there would be areas, if you want to work on sustainability, you want to work on digital, you want to work on agility, there could be many areas where you need to get the right people on board, driving the right programs, helping them. There should be people who are passionate about driving it. So all that is very important. So to me, transformation is about understanding the context. It's about articulating it in a manner that everyone feels invested in it. People on the shop floor should know what it means. When I talk of digital, for instance, while we had top-down targets, we set a target of $2 billion of cost takeout. There's a lot of concern that this is a way of getting rid of people, that technology is going to replace people. But we also had a lot of ideation from bottom up, because we encourage people on the shop floor to say, how can you use technology to make your life easier, right? So it could be somebody in our tubes division who had to count the number of tubes on a truck, to use an app to just take a photograph of that and it would automatically count the number of tubes. There's people who are putting a straw into each of those pipes so that they could count how many are there. Or it could be somebody who needed to find the temperature in a furnace and had to walk to the control room to do that, whereas he could just point his phone at the furnace and get the temperature, right? So it was about ideas which helped improve the lives of people on the shop floor. At the same time, there were big ideas where you had big cost takeout. So everyone felt engaged, involved, invested in that kind of a journey. Okay, so when you do that, then the momentum picks up on the transformation. You need more people to drive that inertia rather than resist the change, right? And that driving that doesn't come from just instructing people to do it, right? It can't work that way. It comes when they are themselves invested in it. It comes from when that becomes the way you work rather than the way you're told to work, right? So you need to do that. You need to, set those goals. Like I said, we had $2 billion cost takeout targets. In the 90s, Dr. Irani said that we should target to become the lowest cost producer of steel in the world, and so on and so forth. So there were goals which are set. We have now said by 2030 we want to be the most valuable steel company in the world, right? So that's a tangible goal. So there is a long-term plan. It's about changing the culture. It's about building the capabilities, investing in the facilities that are required, but also have something to chase so that it's tangible. It's not something that is very fuzzy and people don't know what you're chasing, right? And it should not be something that you achieve the next year. It should be something which calls for a lot of effort and will take a lot of time. If it was so easy, then you don't need to run a transformation program. You would have done it anyways, right? You also need to see how do you build your reward mechanisms around it. How do you reward the people who are doing the things the way you want it done, and build that into the compensation systems. For instance, when we were looking at how do we make Tata Steel more agile, we said, what are the qualities that you look for in agile ways of working, right? So we look for people who are collaborative, we look for people who are responsive, we look at people who invest in developing people, right? So these are all important qualities we look for. So then we designed a 360-degree system to see. So people are judged by their peers, their team members, by their seniors, whether they demonstrate these qualities. And while we did it as a feedback mechanism, we said in a couple of years it's going to impact your bonuses and the way you consider for growth and things like that. So it's something that is not a thing that you would do when you remember to do it, but you realize that my career will depend on whether I demonstrate these behaviors, right? So it needs to be built into the reward systems, etc. Right? And the other thing which is important also is to stick with it, because different organizations take different periods of time to make it the way they work. So any transformation program for it to be successful, if you're driving a change in the way in which people are working, you're trying to change culture, you're trying to change practices, processes, etc. Eventually it needs to be the way you work. It cannot be a transformation program forever, right? In Tata Steel, I've seen typically any transformation exercise, major one. I'm not talking of the small ones where you would do it as any change management program. For me, a transformation program is like a multi-dimensional change management program. It takes 3 to 5 years before it becomes the way you work, right? So it will be different. Maybe in some organizations it will happen in a couple of years. Some organizations it may take 10 years. You never know. It depends on how large and complex the organization is, and how much of an appetite the organization has to change, how committed the leadership is. Leadership is not just the CEO, but at multiple levels in the organization, how committed they are, etc., etc. But eventually, to me, it should become the way you work, right? While you may initially run it with a set of passionate people, you weave it into the way you work, but eventually that should become, the natural way of working for everyone or most people in the organization. It should be part of the culture of the organization. So when we say we want to be Tata Steel future ready, we're saying how can we be culturally, structurally and financially future ready, right? And the culture part is very important. What are the elements of the culture of the future that you want? What are the elements of the culture of the past that you want to preserve, that you want to strengthen, and that you want to discard, right? So a large organization like us who's been around for a long time, we have a lot of bureaucracy, right? Because processes have got tighter and tighter over the years, and that translates into bureaucracy, right? And so the question is, how do you remove that bureaucracy? How do you become more agile? Yeah. So that's a part of the culture we want to tweak. But we are known for our value system, for our integrity, for doing good to the community. Those are parts of the culture which are very important, which we will continue to preserve and strengthen, right? So what are the elements of the culture that you want to discard, that you want to change, and what are the elements of culture you want to strengthen, and what are the new elements of culture that you want to bring in? So what are the elements of culture you need to have if you want to attract the younger demographic so that they are as invested as we were when we joined the company, right? So like I said, I spent 36 years in Tata Steel. Not that when I joined Tata Steel I thought I would spend 36 years in Tata Steel, but today's youngsters, and I know there are a few who are on the call, when they join a company or when they're out there, they have more options than we had when we were looking for jobs, right? So nobody's going to come in thinking that I'm going to spend the rest of my life in this company. You have to work harder to get people invest a couple of decades in the company, or 30 years or 40 years, etc. Right? So then, how do you make your organization the organization which excites youngsters so that you can retain them? Right? It's not easy. Right? So I think these are all elements which become part of the transformation program, because what are you transforming for? You're transforming so that you're there, you exist. We are, like I always tell my colleagues, we are a multi-generational company, right? So it's like you're running a relay race, somebody's given you the baton, you're running with it. There's somebody at the other end who's going to pick up the baton and run with it, right? So you have to run a good race and make sure that you handle the baton very well. So it's a multi-generational company. So one of the most important jobs we do is to make sure that the company is stronger in the future, and it's better, or at least during your time you made it stronger. And it's not just my job, it's about everyone's job in Tata Steel. If I'm in a certain function in Tata Steel, in a certain department, in a certain plant, have I made that plant stronger during my leadership, right? So these are important, particularly when you work in organizations who've been around for a long time. How do you drive the transformation in a manner that you have a brighter future ahead, and keep reinventing yourself so that you can, because it's a rapidly changing world, all of us know, and not many organizations have been around for a long time. So, and having been around for a long time is no guarantee that you'll be around for a long time in the future, right? So how do you build that capability? And when you drive transformation programs, it's also important, like I said, in a Tata Steel context, if it takes 3 to 5 years, I need to make sure that I stick with it. It's not that every 3 months I've read a new book and then I want to do something else, right? Because then the organization gets confused, right? So if you have to think hard about what is it that you want to transform, and then you stick with it for 3 to 5 years. Not to say that you can change your mind at some point in time and drop it, but don't confuse the organization. Because then people get confused and they don't persist with what you want to do. So you have to be very careful. And like I said, if you're driving a big ship, make sure you don't drive it like a speedboat, right? So you need to, again, that's a contextual understanding that one should have when you're driving transformation programs. Not only the external context, but the complexity and size of the organization that you're trying to transform. And hence the need for some stability along with the agility that you seek to have. And the last point on transformation which I want to make is also about how do you find that balance between a sense of urgency without creating a panic, right? Because again, creating panic will not bring the best out of people. Creating a sense of urgency hopefully will bring out the best in people. So, and I think that's also a very important role that one plays, and it also depends on how you articulate the problem, how you build the capabilities, how you set the goals, and how you help the organization achieve those goals. So leadership, I like the word art. It says art of transformation because one thing which I'm also from a management school, so one thing which no management school will be able to do as good a job as real life can is your ability to deal with people and situations, right? So as many case studies as you do, it's not like being there, out there experiencing it. Dealing with people, different people, they all have their own context, right? So handling people is to me one of the most complex challenges you will face, when you're dealing, with your life, professional life and personal life, right? So to me, the art of, I like the word art because there may be a lot of science in it, but more than that, there's art. There's the way you handle situations and people requires you to have a learning mindset, a very perceptive mindset to learn from the situation that you experience. Because people go through the same situation and learn different things, right? And so your ability to take the most out of that is, I think, a very important part of your development as a leader and your ability to transform organizations or get people to invest in what you're trying to drive and change. So I'll pause there. I know it's been about 20 minutes since I've been speaking, 25 minutes, and I'm happy to take any questions or be more specific in what is said. Thank you. I'll pause there. Come on, Trichy. Yeah.
Thank you, Narendran. So nice of you. You really laid the roadmap for today's discussion and the Q&A. And what you said in the beginning itself, a leader is a basically lifelong learner. He continues to learn from his juniors, from his colleagues, from his seniors, and whom he is leading also. And let me tell you, sir, Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership is exactly trying to inculcate those values. We missed listening to Partha Gadda, who started this academy, who is the founder. Partha, are you there? Partha, are you there?
I'm there. Yeah, I'm there.
Sir, can you just highlight in a few sentences what exactly Partha Ghosh Academy is trying to do? Exactly the same thing what Narendran sir said it.
I think you have just answered it. Firstly, Narendran, thank you very much. And first, I would like to dedicate this particular lecture in honor of my good friend, Mr. Ratan Tata. In fact, in many ways, Narendran, what you just shared with us, Mr. Tata would have been very, very happy to hear what you said. Let me tell you why. In 1987, Ratan Tata was visiting Tokyo with Otima Boria and some industry ministers, and they came to my home in Tokyo. At that time I was living in Japan, and he asked a very interesting question. He said, Partha, what defined the success of Japan in the 50s, that they introduced 100 brand names in 15 years? And my answer to that was leadership with humility, leadership to be a good student, and leadership with ambition. And then I added the concept of Kaizen, which is continuous improvement, which is a continuous transformation, and in the process be ambitious, be agile, and take over the world. And I personally feel the Academy of Leadership has been created to bring that culture in our country, and first we have to bring that culture into IIT Kharagpur. That how do we get rid of bureaucracies? How do we make the place agile, make the place fun? And I think you have underscored that so beautifully, that how we could make this institution, make the country agile, transformational, because in knowledge-intensive world, Narendran, as you know, every day is new. And unless we transform, sometimes a linear transformation, sometimes a discontinuous transformation. And the third point which Academy particularly appreciates is that our ability to integrate Eastern and Western philosophy. Eastern philosophy is all about relationship, harmony, power from within. Western philosophy is external and Cartesian. And we are trying to bring the two together, not rejecting it. So obviously this lecture is a major step forward towards what we are trying to achieve. So that's the humble thing about the Academy. It's only about 3 years old. IIT Kharagpur is working very hard to take this Academy forward, but we are just about little bit off the ground. We have got a long way to go. We need your help. So I'll summarize the lectures later, what you have said more, but that's a quick introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Partha. Thank you. Thank you. Now, sir, may I request you? Now, I believe a leader can lead actually in any organization, a true leader. Now, sir, you as the chairman of Board of Governors of IIT Kharagpur, when we are going to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of IIT Kharagpur from next year onwards, from January, I think IIT Kharagpur is not the actually Platinum Jubilee of IIT Kharagpur, it's the Platinum Jubilee of the IIT system. So keeping that in mind, sir, can IIT Kharagpur, you can take the lead in transform these two, celebrate the Platinum Jubilee. Let us transform it, sir. The so-called what we call business process re-engineering. I tell you, sir, Professor V.K. Tiwari has started many things. And we have a dynamic deputy director also here. The team is excellent, sir, with you. Let's take it with a focused approach. The so-called business process re-engineering and so many other things. And you lead the team, sir. Let's go. And PGA, Partha Ghosh Academy, all people will get along with you, sir, in doing that. Let's set an example for all the 23 ITs and NITs also, in fact.
No, thank you. So I'm obviously happy to play whatever role I can, but honestly, the job of transforming the institute lies with the management of the institute, right? So I because I'm there once in a few months, once in 2-3 months I'm there, and I'm happy to kind of provide whatever support and guidance I can. But obviously, the management of the institute, who are running the institute on a day-to-day basis, needs to obviously drive it. It's just like Tata Steel. My chairman and board is of great help for me, but it's ultimately my responsibility as a CEO of Tata Steel to drive the transformation of Tata Steel, right? So I think having said that, I think what is for us, for all of us, I mean, my association with IIT Kharagpur was earlier through my friends. I had a lot of friends who passed out from IIT Kharagpur, but more recently through the board. So I'm having the privilege of leading the oldest management or chairing the board of the oldest management institute in the country, which is XLRI. It was started before the IIMS, and the oldest IIT in the country, which is IIT Kharagpur, right?
Yes, sir.
So to me, one of the biggest strengths, if you're the oldest institute, and I think I said that to Professor Tiwari and Professor Banerjee, is that then you have the most alumni, right?
Correct.
Because you had alumni passing out before anybody else, right? So how do we as an institute leverage the alumni? And because the alumni are the most emotionally invested in the institute, right? I find that because it's a matter of pride for the alumni, and every alumni wants to see the institute they passed out doing well. And I know people like Dr. Partha, Ghosh and you are playing a role there as alumni, and I know there are many alumni who are playing that role. So I think how do we as management of the institute, the board of the institute and the alumni of the institute come together? There's something surely we should discuss, and I think I've had thoughts and ideas from many of the alums in the past, and we need to see how to do that. The government is supportive, and I can tell you the government also has an ambition to say that IIT Kharagpur is the oldest IIT, and and it needs to occupy that position of pride for everyone. So the government is also supportive. So I think we have lots of supporters. Now we need to get into the execution of it. Right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have another, sir, a very senior person from IIT Kharagpur. Purandang, are you there? Purandang? Purandang, are you connected? Looks like no. Okay, fine, doesn't matter. So Purandang is only just 20 years senior to me, sir, only 20 years. But he is one of the advisors with Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership and really advising us day in and day out. So there are such people starting from the first batch, 55 batch, who are connected with us and they are guiding us. And there is one question from Rajendra Pratap Singh ji. He says, what is the recommended leadership model or style for sustainability of successful startups in today's time?
Well, to me, what I'm very excited about is the fact that so many people in India want to start companies, because when we were passing out of the good schools and colleges, our ambition was to get a job, right? Whereas today I'm happy to see a lot of talented people wanting to start companies, because if you have 1 million people joining the workforce every month, as we have in India, you need more and more job creators as much as you have job seekers, right? So I think I'm really excited about that. The second thing which is good is capital is flowing across borders, and I think while maybe even 10, 20, 30 years back you had to depend on getting some loan from a bank, and that depended oftentimes on the surname that you had or the antecedents of the assets that you had. Today there's a lot of capital willing to support committed, passionate, capable entrepreneurs, and I think that is a game changer as well. But I think the question is what is on sustainable startups? I think maybe a few years back there was a lot of easy money coming in, and so maybe sustainability, which means I'm talking financial sustainability, being there for a long time, was not really the focus. It was more about getting funding for immediate growth. Whereas now I think there is more and more, you have a lot of successful startups and you see more and more of them focusing on the bottom line as much as the top line, right? So top line is important, but unless you have a bottom line, you cannot go on forever without a bottom line, right? You can go, as long as somebody is willing to write a check, you can go without a bottom line. But somewhere you have to be able to generate cash flows, right?
Correct.
So I think more and more organizations are recognizing that. And if you have a very strong value proposition, and many of the startups have that, and you have people who are willing to invest in you, and you use that money well and build you have a value creation, not just for yourself but also for all the people who invested in you, I think you have a good story. So I think ultimately the fundamentals have to be strong, and there's nothing to substitute cash flows in any organization.
Great, sir. Thank you, sir. And Purandangi, are you there now? No.
I see Dr. Goswami has raised his
Admin,
Morbi.
admin, you have to unmute. And Goswami sir, please go ahead.
Puran is there.
Yeah. Goswami sir, please go ahead quickly. Puran sir. Purandang.
He was having difficulty unmuting himself.
Unmute. He may be finding it difficult to unmute, sir. Goswami sir, can you ask the question? No. Okay, no problem. Fine.
Puran shared the question with me.
So,
So should I relay the question on behalf of Puran?
Sure.
Okay.
next question.
It is very much in line with Commander. Puran's question was that the Academy of Leadership has made a decent start, but it is very slow compared to what we could have achieved. How could you guide us to really take it to the right level of activity so that the country could benefit and the world could benefit? That is his question.
No, honestly, I think the question to also ask is, because leadership is such a big subject, I think, at least to me, and maybe you have the answers because all of you started the institute. I need to spend more time in the institute to maybe understand it better. But the way I see it, what are we looking at? Developing young leaders? Are we looking at mid-career leaders? Are you looking at CEOs and helping them? Are you looking at leaders to drive social change, corporate change? Are you looking at helping family businesses professionalize? Are you looking at, helping young entrepreneurs? So I think because leadership is so vast and so big, and everyone is doing lots of programs on it, I think it's useful when we start the institute to say, okay, how do I differentiate myself as a leadership institute? What would be the thing that say, hey, I need to go to the Partha Ghosh Leadership Institute because that's the best place for this. I think if we can define that and build the capability around that, then maybe we can, then you can branch out, right, into other areas, right? Even if you look at the IITs, right, always traditionally, if for some branch you went to some IIT, right, because they were strong in some branches, some IITs were strong in something else. For instance, on metallurgy, for a long time it used to be BHU, right, which used to be the place where most metallurgists came from, and a lot of metallurgists joined Tata Steel. We also had metallurgists from IIT Kharagpur come to Tata Steel. But I'm just saying that not all IITs had metallurgy. I don't know how many have it today, but maybe material science or whatever. But I'm saying we probably need to see how are we positioning ourselves? What is that specific value that we will be delivering? Why would people want to come to us and not go to somewhere else? And then build off that. That's my humble advice with very limited understanding of the institute, beyond what I've read and what I've learned.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Dr. Virendra Swami, quick one from your side.
Well, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. I am very happy to see Partha Ghosh first because I saw the institute but I had not seen him. And it's all credit goes to Commander Jetli, and I must congratulate Narendran for your wonderful lecture which I could enjoy very much. I want to add only 2 points in this. What I have realized that our country needs not the job seekers, we need the entrepreneurs. When the entrepreneurs produce, he gives job to 1,000 people, while a job seeker gets only job for himself. The other thing I would like to have, what Tatas have followed all the time, and you have also mentioned in the lecture, indirectly, if you could catch it. I always believed as a Vice Chancellor, Director of the Institute, and even a Commander in the Indian Air Force, in the governance system, all the time, military management, stress management, the thing which I realize is the award policy. You should adopt the award policy. Instead of punishing the people, you are producing the criminals in the society. Once you give the award to the people, it is better governance you do because the leader is always a creator. You should be a creator. You have got no right to spoil somebody's career and whatever post you do have. This is what I just wanted to add. I will see you. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
Fantastic.
And we are just running out of time, sir. And Partha, please summarize.
That would be a very difficult task. But first, in the spirit of summary, Narendran, thank you very much. I think you have touched the points with the highest level of humility, which defines a leader. The second point that Narendran touched on right from the get-go, that great leaders are great students. And I often add, great leaders are great servants. They serve others, they lift up others, they don't lift up themselves. That happens by the forces of nature. Unfortunately, many leaders believe they have to become the boss, they are the boss. But that's a wrong model of leadership. That doesn't work. Leaders help others to go up. In the process, they define, and that came out very, very loud and clear from your talk. The third point is very important when you chose the subject transformation. And I see in the knowledge-intensive world, every day new innovation is happening. Anyone who believes I know it all is obviously not the right person for the right job. Great leaders have to continuously think, what is the next phase? What is the next chapter? And they help to take the organization forward. Sometimes it's a big transformation, as we talked about. You have to get rid of 40,000 people. And it was done so beautifully that took them to Japanese factories and Korean factories. And that Swami Vivekananda once said, which he, while talking to J.R.D. Tata, he made 2 points. One point he said that, I hope every Indian one time visit Japan to understand efficiency, understand humility. And these are the 2 things, unfortunately, missing in our country, and I think we have to work on it. And Tata Steel is obviously an example, particularly when you say we want to be the lowest cost producer and at the same time be the highest, most valuable company in steel. And Narendran, I would love to help you on that because I had the privilege to work with the chairman of Nippon Steel. And I want to share a story. He took me to the blast furnace and he stood there and he said, this is the best blast furnace in the world. But the nameplate said it was established in 1935. And I was visiting the blast furnace in 1995. See, that was the spirit of transfer. He said, we have continuously transformed this blast furnace, but the spirit of the blast furnace has been there. The blast furnace does its work, but it does it in a most state-of-the-art fashion. That is transformation. The way people work with the furnace, treat it as literally as an individual who has to grow. So that's kind of spirit I think you have touched on would be extremely important for a great leader. And the final point, I'm looking at my notes, is a very important point. In the name of agility, you did say that we should not panic. Sometimes what happens in many organizations, I notice, they delay the work. In the last moment, there's a panic. Things do not get done well. In the process, excellence gets compromised. So it's building the culture of urgency. That if I have 3 months, I should decide what should I do in the first week of that 3 months. Normal tendencies are we delay it, we don't give attention. In the last 3 weeks, we now want to do 3 months of work. And that creates panic, and that's not an example of a good leader. And I'm so glad you touched on it, because that's one thing India could definitely benefit. We do a lot of things in panic mode, never with a culture of urgency. And the final point that we should take from you, when you talked about the relay race, that how Tata as a multi-generational company has gone through, and I think our friend Gopal has written a great book on Tata. I think we should celebrate that book as well. And he and I were discussing while he was writing the book, Partha, how many companies are there which has lived through multi-generation? And there are actually 6 companies in the world. Only 6 companies. And the oldest one I want to touch on is a company called Beretta, which is an Italian gun manufacturer, where Leonardo da Vinci was one of the board of advisors. But what the company did, very much in line with Tata's, they never fired anyone. So when the demand for guns was low, they used to use the people to upgrade the quality of the factory. And that's how they dealt with the cycles. So I think commitment to people, remaining agile, and how to maintain the speed of transforming from one generation to another generation is something that you touched on. And I think that's a very important takeaway for everyone who attended the meeting. And with your permission, we will convert this into a booklet And before we publish it, we could obviously take you. I want to give it to you first. So that's how we could honor our great friend Ratan Tata. So once again, I want to dedicate this on behalf of IIT Kharagpur and the Academy to the greatness of Ratan Tata and the greatness of your speech. Thank you.
sir.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
think
You've been very kind.
Purandangi for the last word. Are you there? You are 59 batch 20 years clear to me, sir.
I am
want if
speaking.
you are there.
I am not able to connect.
Now you're there. We can hear you.
We are able to hear you, sir, and we can see you also. Please go ahead quickly.
Yeah, you are hearing me?
Yes,
sir,
yes.
we can, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. It was a wonderful talk, Narendran ji, and first time meeting you. As our commander said, I am one of the oldest, saw the first commencement when the degrees were given by Prime Minister Nehru. And as our academy, Partha Ghosh Academy, Partha and me live only few minutes away and we are dearest friends. And in the academy, I was one of the first one that joined him. So what you have said is learn culture and people. They are beautiful messages because it is the humility of a leader to learn even from the person who's at the lower level of his position. Sometimes you learn from a very poor man. And the culture is very important, which you said, and I admire your horizon about culture. And then people, how to select good people. So all you said, is wonderful. About our academy, the discovery of zero, economics of 𝐭𝐫𝐚𝐽𝐻 and wisdom of Swami Vivekananda and Rabindranath Tagore are just a few examples of our wisdom of our country. Our academy has started on that premise that we have a lot to offer to the world, love and compassion. A leader who's ruthless is no good. We need the blessings of people who have good mind,
Sir,
but at the
can't
same
hear you. There is
time,
disturbance.
good heart. Thank you very
Can't hear,
much,
sir.
Narendran.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Shubh Deepavali to everybody. And Professor Manav, are you there? Manav Das?
Yes, sir, I am here.
Formal vote of thanks from your side. Chairman?
Yeah, if you kindly allow me, then I'll
Please.
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 Thank
We
you,
will
sir.
be
And
happy
it was
to
really
listen to you.
an exciting lecture, and I enjoyed all the words. And definitely, it is a great learning experience for me, and to imbibe those words. And the most important thing is to execute actually. Not only imbibing the things, but executing actually with humiliation. So the nicest word probably I learned today is the humiliation. Service with humiliation. That's the quality of a great leader. And because I read some books actually by Subrata Bakshi, where he said actually he's like a gardener. So he's like a and he was mentoring the younger generations. What Mr. Narendran has mentioned throughout his lectures, very interesting. Actually, I have heard already one of his lecture when he addressed the faculty members in his first visit to IIT Kharagpur. Thank you, sir. I'm so beautiful lectures, and I would like to thank Commander Jetli and of course, sir, and Dr. Partha Ghosh. I have never met you, sir, actually in person, and I would like to meet you in person and get you the greatest advices from you for the betterment actually. And as we are going towards the platinum jubilee of this the first IIT in the country, so that is a great occasion to celebrate, and I hope that all alumnus will come. Most of the alumnus will come here, and we'll be able to give them a nice ambience kind of thing, where they will be basking on the kind of beauties of the transformation of IIT Kharagpur from, as Puran Dhangji, the batch of 59, so all from batch of 59 to the youngest generation. So thank you, sir, Dr. Partha Ghosh, for an exciting actually inputs and detailed summing up of what Narendran ji has. Thank you, Professor Dr. Banerjee, madam, being the nice introduction about Mr. Narendra, and hopefully we will be able to have this kind of things. And as Dr. Partha Ghosh has mentioned, making a kind of booklet, that is a wonderful venture, and would help the younger people to get motivated from the experiences of the beautiful leaders of the country. And Tata Steel, of course, the name itself is, as I read somewhere during, as you mentioned, that during this First World War and Second World War, Tata Steel actually supplied the lots of steel to the government actually, and that was one of the very interesting fact I read about Tata Steel. Of course, that name was different that time. So thank you again, sir, for the great illuminating lecture, and of course so many great people are around here, and it will be a great experience if there is an occasion to meet you in person in IIT Kharagpur in this Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership. Thank you, sir. That's what I can say, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Manadev. Last sentence I want to say, Narendran sir, a long time back, I think 15 years, maybe 20 years back, Tata Steel ka one ad used to be there. We do this, we do this, social work in the surrounding areas, so many things Tata Steel does. And then one more line used to be there. We also make steel. Yeah. That's the humility, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
With the heart
you
of
very
society.
much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Narendran. So nice.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Shubh Deepavali to everybody. Have
Yes,
a nice
happy Diwali
Happy
to everyone.
Professor
Dhanteras.
Banerjee, Professor Das, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali.